So the first video in a while that we've done, been crazy busy with the residencies and everything else, which is good. And I got pulled up the other day and said, you haven't done a video on this? I was like, yes, I need to do one. So we have a bit of an update around the cars situation, specifically the British cars. All intents and purposes, they're now being considered vehicles from third countries, i.e. outside the EU, and have to pass through the import protocol as such in customs and excise. So up till now, the DGT, have waived that the need to do that if you could prove that the vehicle was here last year. Because if the vehicle had already been imported last year, it wouldn't, before the 1st of January, it wouldn't need to be imported. But now, we're 3 months down the line, and they're getting tighter and tighter and tighter unless you've got real proof that the vehicle was here before, i.e. it started the registration process with the ITV, then you've got no chance really of not having to complete the customs protocol. So what is the customs protocol? What do the vehicles have to do? Well, they have to go to a place called aduanas. Aduanas have tax agents there, and they basically assess the value of the vehicle, and they will charge you tax and duty accordingly on that vehicle. Or if you've got the correct documentation, you can waive that tax. Now, by far, the best way to approach clearing the customs protocol and completing it is by contracting an agent. So an agent is somebody who acts on your behalf with customs. They're authorized and they basically do the work for you. Now I'm going to explain the process, and then I'll explain the documentation that's needed to go through this process. So first of all, for example, in our case, we now have an agent. It's a recent thing we've had to get set up, who's now working with us, because up to this point it wasn't needed. Now it is. And what he does is he comes to our office when we've made an appointment with a client. The client comes with a car, and then we've got the car here and the agent here. They've got their paperwork. Then the agent, he jumps on his computer or jumps on our system, and he then presents all the documentation to the import authorities. Okay, then the import authorities will check that documentation, and it'll either come up when he submits it. There's a traffic light system. So you submit it, the client's here, and it'll either come up green straight away. Brilliant. We've got green, which means he can then complete the process and he can get this document called a DUA, and you can happily go and register your vehicle. It might come up, orange. Now, orange means that you have to wait. It means that the paperwork's being processed. It means that they're going to review it. Orange, could be a 20-minute wait, could be a 2-hour wait, but it definitely comes out that day. You get a response, and if it then goes from orange to green, he can then complete what he needs to do, and he will give you the DUA document. You can carry on. What happens if it goes from what happens if it goes straight to red, or goes to orange and then goes to red? Well, if it goes to red, you then need to go with the vehicle, with your documentation, down to the port wherever you're trying to import the vehicle. So here, for example, it's Malaga. All right, so we had one the other day, it came up red, so we had to go down to the port, we had to take the vehicle, they verify the vehicle, verify the documentation, and eventually we got a green, or they request more documentation from you. All right, so that's basically the process. You get an agent, you meet with that agent, he processes the documents, traffic light system, green, amber, red. Green means good, you're going to get it straight away. Amber means you have to wait. It might go green and you get your DUA, or it might go red and you have to have a visit to the import agent down in the Malaga port, or it might go red straight away, which means you have to get to Malaga port. All right, so what's the two ways you can import a vehicle? Well, you can import them either paying the taxes straight away, which means in that case, obviously, you need all your personal identification documentation, the documentation of the vehicle. The agent will find a price off the BOE. The BOE is the book of prices. Well, BOE is many things, but part of the BOE, it indicates the base price for a vehicle. They then apply a percentage for the age, which gives it a reduction, gives you the current market value. And on that market value, you'll pay 21% VAT and 10% duty. Okay, you'll also evidently have to pay the agent fee, which is anything between €1 and €300. Most of the time, if you're paying the tax, you'll find that when you do the operation, the agent does the operations, it will go into orange. They will then check, obviously remotely, the paperwork, see the agent has chosen the right model, check the documentation, check that there's no fines against the person or anything like that, and it goes green and you get your DUA. A more complicated situation is when you're trying to do it for change of residence. Okay, so when you're doing it for change of residence, you're waiving the tax, and as you can imagine, they don't waive tax lightly here in Spain, and certainly not the import-export authorities. This is where it gets complicated. So to waive the tax on an import of a vehicle, you need to prove where you have been up to the point for at least 12 months before you took residency, at least 12 months, hopefully more. You have to prove that you have signed off at that place, that you're no longer there, that you're no longer paying taxes there, that you don't belong there, and that you've signed on in Spain. All right, so the signing on in Spain bit isn't too hard. All right, so you've got your padron, you've got your residency, that's fine. Right, it's proven where you've come from before. So a lot of the consulates issue a document called a bajo consular, but unfortunately the British consulate don't do that anymore. They haven't done that since 2013. So we have had a few letters from councils which prove that people have signed off the electoral roll, and with this the problem we're having at the moment is they've signed on the padron before they've signed off the electoral roll, and it needs to be the way around. They need to have signed off the electoral roll before they've signed on the padron, so they're not accepting it. For people who have come over here, maybe been here, been signed on the padron for more than 2 or 3 years but not actually taking residencies, they go from the date of the padron, so you can't waive the tax. If the paperwork is correct and the timeline works, they're still asking for further documentation to prove that you are actually living in the place that you said you were going to live. You said you were living before you came to Spain, so there could be anything from electric bills to school registrations, anything. There's not a set ABC of what you have to provide. They're just going to individually assess each case. So it really is quite tough to waive the tax on an import vehicle. And the reason they're being so tough is because of what I mentioned before, that there's so many people that have been here, haven't legalised their situation, they might have been here 2 or 3 years, haven't taken residency, been pushed to because of Brexit, and now the tax authorities don't want people taking residency, taking advantage of this tax break who've actually been living here. So unfortunately, it's a little bit guilty, as always, guilty until proven innocent. But yeah, so that's the situation at the moment with the vehicles. British vehicles, evidently, that arrive in Spain after the 1st of January definitely have to go through this process because they're coming from a non-EU country. And the vehicles which are here, that were here last year, if they hadn't started the process of doing the ITV, i.e. the registration with the ITV station, then they're more than likely going to have to go through this process as well. So it's becoming increasingly difficult to register British cars in Spain. Well, I say difficult, it's becoming increasingly more expensive to register cars in Spain.